Welcome into an all-new episode of the American Huddle alongside college football analyst Andy Gresh. I'm Haley Out, and we're happy to have you with us as we preview Week 5 of the college football season. And we get action started a little early this week, Friday night. Memphis heads to Tulane, and the Tigers looking for their first conference win of the season. How do you think Memphis will do on the road?
Yeah, I think Memphis will do fine on the road. Now, it's really the opponent Tulane where you start to wonder about them a little bit and what Willie Fritz is doing offensively. They've had some issues scoring touchdowns in the passing game. And we know, Haley, if there's one thing Memphis can do, they can score. And I know we mentioned it when we look back on the games last week. Hold teams to 28 points, then Memphis can go score and do what they need to do. They need to get a win on the road here as much as Tulane needs a win in conference. So I think you're going to get a spirited effort from the Green Wave. This will not be easy this week for Memphis.
We've seen Tulane lose a couple of really close games this season. How did they come out on the other side of that this time around?
Well, you know, they played some halfway decent competition, so I think that's a part of it too. And when you look at who they played, you say, okay, I can understand why that game was tough. Hopefully they're mentally tested and they have the ability to do what Cincinnati did last week, Haley, which was to get down 3 touchdowns and still fight and find their way to come back and get a win.
Let's stay in conference play on Saturday. Cincinnati heads to UConn, and the Bearcats looking for their 5th win of the season. What is your biggest question heading into this East Division game?
Well, how will Cincinnati handle prosperity? Because they're 4-0 now. They got everybody telling them how great they are, and they're going in to play a wounded UConn team. And you look at UConn defensively, they're playing a lot of young kids. You know, they're playing 5 freshmen. They're playing young sophomores. So they've been making mistakes defensively. At some point, you got to look at Randy Edsall and say, okay, when is this group going to start to get better? I think in terms of a comparison standpoint, think of where Cincinnati was when they brought in Luke Fickell. Think of where UConn was when they brought in Randy Edsall, and kind of look at what's gone on over these past, season plus 2 seasons. I think Cincinnati has done a great job. To me, it will be, will they be able to handle the success? If they do, then they have a chance to have a really great season.
You can tune in to Cincinnati and UConn, a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kick on CBS Sports Network. Now we're going to move out of conference play. 4 games on the slate. Temple heads up east to Boston College. How have the Owls improved over the last 2 games?
Well, I think defensively they got ball hawks and guys who want to get it to the house, Haley. And again, you can't count on that. But when you have a group that wants to strip the football from running backs, that wants to separate the football from wide receivers, that's a little different than we see nowadays in terms of defense. I think they're old school defensively, but they're going to go against the BC group where A.J. Dillon did not run the ball very well against Purdue. Purdue kind of punched them in the nose, and they were sort of on roller skates, and on their heels was Boston College. But at the end of the day, Temple can go up there and make it difficult on them. If I'm Temple, I want a rock fight. I want it to be 17-17 going into the 4th quarter, because I know my defense will capitalize on a mistake and turn it into points.
Temple at Boston College. That's a noon Eastern kick. And hey, the American has a doubleheader on ESPNU, because after Temple, you can catch Pitt at UCF. And for the Knights, this is their first real home test. What are we going to learn about UCF, Mackenzie Milton, and the whole team in this game?
Haley, I'm glad you said that, because in my notes, that's what I wrote down, is that this is a Power 5 test for UCF. And this will be one of those games where it's the whole stamp of approval from the rest of the outside college football world. I think UCF's going to handle Pitt and win by 14 or more. I expect Mackenzie Milton to play great. I expect UCF to rise up. First time for Josh Heupel as the head coach in a spot like this against a Power 5 opponent. Hey, Pat Narduzzi, the coach at Pitt, was one of my coaches at Rhode Island. He was our defensive line coach when I was there all the way back in 92, 93, 94. So I know Doozer, he's going to have that group ready to go. But I think UCF and Mackenzie Milton, it's another 5-6 touchdown day for Milton when it's all said and done.
Pitt at UCF, a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPNU, and a couple of other non-conference games a little bit later. ODU heads to ECU, and the Pirates coming off of a loss at USF, but I think we've seen the Pirates really improve game by game this season. ODU coming off of a win that stole the headlines this past week against Virginia Tech. What do you expect to see in this home game and the Pirates back in North Carolina?
I expect ECU to be able to make big plays against an ODU defense that has given it up. Now, look, last week against Virginia Tech, you give ODU all the credit in the world. They did a great job of finding a way to score points. They won in critical situations, and they won the battle of the fourth quarter. But that said, as you mentioned, Scotty Montgomery's crew is getting better and better and better. They're scoring more points. They're making big plays on the outside. I think this is a very winnable game for ECU, regardless of the headlines ODU got last week. Remember, if you get into all of the different betting stuff, you're looking at ODU as a team that maybe had an 11% chance to beat Virginia Tech. So it was the real upset of upsets. And again, how will they handle prosperity? They got everybody on campus being like, oh, you did a great job this week. Well, let's see if you go to ECU and can do the same thing.
ODU at ECU, that's a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPN3. And closing out the evening, Houston Baptist at SMU. The Mustangs, of course, coming off of their first win of the season, and an exciting one. It was over Navy last week. If you're head coach Sonny Dykes, what are you looking to build off of this week against Houston Baptist?
Momentum. I need momentum. I need my guys to believe. I need them to know that I've got their back. And I think the end of that game last week showed I trust you guys. We're going to go forward for the win against teams like Navy. So for SMU, it's keep the momentum going and begin the build under Sonny Dykes. I know it sounds simple, but if you're 1-3 versus 0-4, big difference in the feel around the program.
3 conference matchups, 4 on the non-conference side. What will the headline be at this time next week?
That Cincinnati will join the Florida teams at being undefeated. And of course, they're there already, but I'm talking about they take that step to where they're closer to a bowl. They continue to validate themselves, and they're the team that really stands out. That, and I think how well Mackenzie Milton's going to play against Pitt. It's going to help his Heisman candidacy.
So Cincinnati and UCF, if it's up to this guy, they're still undefeated next week, and USF on a bye, so they'll be sitting at 4-0.
And not for nothing, but my predictions have been pretty rock solid so far this year.
Pretty good. We'll give you that. We'll give you that.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to an all-new episode of the American Huddle. Make sure to keep it here on Facebook and head over to Twitter at American_FB for wraparound coverage this week as we look at Week 5 of the college football season. Have a great weekend.